I want to give our viewers an idea of what we're talking about, all right? There's Mexico to the left, Eagle Pass, rather, to the right in the state of Texas. This is about a 2.5-mile stretch along the Rio Grande. The park itself, however, is this 43-acre plot. You got a baseball field and a parking lot there as well. And that's the area right now where Texas said we're going to slow the flow and hopefully we'll stop the flow, hence the reason why the wire has gone up. This is the reality of encounters at the border when you compare the Trump administration with the Biden administration. Per month encounters. You're up to 200,000, right? Here is the election time. So you got Biden in blue and Trump in red, and you see the way this average has gone. I mean, it's pretty incredible from where you were in 2020 to where we are now in early 2024. It's pretty astounding and quite apparent on that. Here's the other part of the story now. You have 25 Republican governors that have said that they will back Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Everything in red. They all chimed in yesterday with the exception of the governor of Vermont. He's the only Republican governor so far who has not gotten behind Texas. I'm going to show you this right now, okay? What did Greg Abbott tell us yesterday? He said we're going to put more barbed wire up there, more concertina wire, and that's video just from yesterday down at the border there. But remember what Matt Finn said now. Ever since this effort began, the number of illegals crossing at that location has dwindled dramatically.
And we have Jonathan Turley joining us. He's, of course, a Fox News contributor. Jonathan, I want you to listen to Greg Abbott. He was explaining how President Biden, as commander-in-chief, has a responsibility to protect the states, and if they can't do it, the states will protect themselves. Here he is.
Included in that agreement was the compact that the federal government would take care of the states. And Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution speaks to that and says that if the federal government does not take care of the states, and the states are in danger, well, we can ask the federal government to live up to its obligation.
All right, Jonathan, get your take this morning as this constitutional crisis kind of ramps up.
Well, I certainly agree with the governor that this is a violation of the understanding between the federal government and the states. The language in Article 1, Section 10, really deals with that agreement that we made with the states and the federal government to move from the Articles of Confederation to a constitutional system with a strong federal government. I don't think anyone can honestly look at the southern border and say that the federal government has fulfilled its pledge. This is an unprecedented crisis brought about, I believe, by President Biden's policies. So on all that, I agree. The problem is that federal courts are unlikely to agree that this is the invasion referenced in the Constitution. There's also a reference to imminent danger. And certainly looking at hundreds of thousands of people crossing an effectively open border presents an imminent danger. But the courts are likely to define that in the context of that provision, in the context of an invasion as with a foreign state. So I think Texas is going to have a hard time making that constitutional argument in court. The problem for the Biden administration is that it has really created an existential crisis here by effectively having an open border. I think that many judges would be sympathetic to Texas, that they have a right to do something. They're being overwhelmed. Even Democratic mayors are now objecting that this is overwhelming their cities. And so the idea of the federal government removing barriers at this time is really otherworldly. But you have to keep in mind, on this fight, the federal government has the upper hand legally. They tend to get a lot of deference along the border.
Okay, so here is Article 1, Section 10. And maybe you nailed it, Professor. Would not surprise me. No state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay. You'd mentioned that comment about invasion. When you consider the number of individuals on the terror watch list that have crossed, Texas would make that argument before the judges. But take note of this. Since SCOTUS made that decision earlier in the week, saying that the federal government can cut wire, I don't believe it's happened just yet. So maybe that's where our stalemate is, Professor.
It may be. Look, this is not Fort Sumter. These are professionals on both sides, and I don't think we're looking at violence. But we are looking at a standoff here that should not have occurred. We should be protecting Texas and protecting that border. There is a strange anomaly, right? When Benedict Arnold took 1,600 men into Canada, it was an invasion. And yet when millions cross into Texas, it's lax law enforcement. And I can understand why Texans balk at that and say, this is an imminent danger to us. The problem is that the courts are likely to say that lax enforcement have been a problem all along. There's been a problem with people crossing that border, and that this provision was really written at a time when those border states were in constant danger of an actual invasion by a foreign power. So that's the reason I think Texas will have a hard time threading this needle in federal court. But that does not relieve the Biden administration politically or even legally, as Texas invokes its other authority as a state power to protect its citizens. And its citizens are at risk.
And it's interesting because I think that the rest of the country, now that this is the #1 issue on voters' minds, they think that Abbott is helping protect them as well. Jonathan Turley, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So much.
To be debated. Andy McCarthy's got a piece out this morning that says Abbott's got a point and could win at the high court. So this debate goes back and forth. You're talking about the governors?
Well, yesterday we had 7 governors, I think, 7 or 9 governors, and I thought that seems low. But by the end of the day and overnight, we now have 25 governors. So it seems like it is breaking along political lines. But you would imagine that some of those governors are thinking, well, I think Abbott does have a point here, but maybe they're under political pressure not to support.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.